Hey everybody, how's it going? Ben here from the Beard Guys. So today for you, we've got a much requested video. It is my controller settings video, my controller sensitivity video that people are always asking about. I did do one a long time ago, but the settings have changed a lot in PUBG since then, so it's definitely worth revisiting. And I also now use an Elite controller, so that's worth touching upon as well. Now, hopefully this video will be useful for any Xbox players looking to maybe dial in their sensitivity settings a little bit, but I'm hoping it'll also be useful for PS4 players as the game gets released on PS4. Obviously the controller is slightly different, but we're all playing on gamepads here, and there's some different nuances to that compared to how you do your sensitivity settings when playing on PC with a mouse and keyboard. So I don't just want to talk about what my settings are, I want to talk about why they are what they are, and also how you can make your settings better for you, because I don't think the best approach is to just copy someone else's settings, because that might not work out at all well for you. I think there's a good approach to take to it, and we're going to talk about that as we go through these. So as you can see, I use controller type B. Whilst we're on the subject of type B controls, it's definitely worth touching upon my Elite controller setup. Now, I bought an Elite a little while ago. I didn't use it for the first, I don't know, 6 months or so I was playing Xbox. I just used a standard controller, but I now use an Elite, and it's been very, very useful for me, particularly with Type B controls. I don't actually use many of the functions on it. I don't have any of the raised sticks on it. I haven't changed any of the sensitivities or the weird settings you can do along the top here. I've not touched any of that stuff yet. Maybe I will in the future. But the only thing I have going for it at the moment, as you can see, is one paddle on the back, which I use for LB, which is hold breath on Type B. It also does over shoulder aiming, which I don't tend to use it for as much, but it's more for hold breath. And originally I bought the Elite because I was going to use the paddles on the back for leaning. I thought that would be very useful for peaking, but due to the way I was gripping the controller, I just found it very awkward to do that, and I'm actually much more comfortable just doing it with the default controls of clicking the sticks. But with this paddle on the back is super useful, because one of the most awkward things to do with Type B controls is to hold your breath while you shoot, because it means you have to aim down sights with the left trigger and hold breath with LB, so you have to kind of claw grip the top or push both with one finger, or it's very awkward to do. So having LB on the back there, I've got one of the short paddles on the upper left-hand slot there on the back of the Elite mapped to LB, and so whenever I fire ADS, or in any situation, when I hold down the left trigger to ADS, I just clutch the left-hand side of my controller tightly, and that pulls in the paddle on the back as well. So basically every time I fire my gun, whether I'm spraying full auto with ADS or whether I'm sniping, I always hold my breath, and it does make a huge difference. And that's been really, really beneficial to me. I definitely recommend checking that out. I've played with other settings on the Elite, but they didn't really work for me. I tried having a paddle that I used for crouching, but I'd keep pushing it too hard and going prone by accident, or knocking it and jumping out of a moving vehicle, which I did yesterday. So I decided to remove that and just stick with LB for now. But yeah, I definitely recommend if you get a paddle-based controller, there's a few around, then LB is definitely one to look out for. Hold breath is definitely the main one to target, and the main point of the paddles is really to stop you having to move your fingers off the key buttons on the front in combat, so you don't want to take your fingers off the sticks too much, or you don't want to take your fingers off the triggers and that kind of thing. So LB helps massively with that, and has yeah, definitely made a difference in my gameplay. My x-axis is default. My y is inverted. That's not a tactical choice. I just always have played with Y inverted on all sorts of games. That's not something you should try and emulate if it's not something you're used to. That's just personal preference there. Dead zone, I've had these on 25 and 20 in this kind of area for a while. I like having them low. There's not a huge reason to that. It's just after a lot of experimentation, I kind of like to have them low. You don't want them too low, otherwise your screen can start to drift a little bit. If they're super low, they become super sensitive to tiny movements, which is not really a good thing. I got vibration off, vibration strength we don't really care about. So these are all the other ones. They used to only go up to 10. Now a lot of them go up to 20. This is a new one that just came in on the recent update. They haven't changed at all yet. I've left it on 10. I'm still fairly happy with that so far, but there's a chance that might change. And that kind of brings us on to a good point, that one of the reasons I put off doing this video for a long time is that my settings are always changing and evolving as my game evolves. And I think that's the best way for you guys and girls to approach getting your settings right, is to start them off at one point and try and evolve them to a point where you're happy with, rather than just expecting to change and bang and then you're done. Because the goal is to have your aim and your movement in the game as quick as possible while also being controlled. And so you want to find that fine point between too quick, so you're wildly shooting all over the place and you can't get your aim dialed in, and too slow. And that's kind of the trick, really. So what I'd recommend is to start off with some of your settings quite low and then bring them up. So I see here I've got my 1x now at 8, my 2x 8, my 3x 8, but I used to have these quite a lot lower. And obviously the gearing, the ratios have changed a little bit, but I used to have these much lower, and then I'd play, and then when I felt that they're a little bit slow, I'd knock them up 1 or 2, and then I'd play more for another week, and I'd see how that felt. And if it felt like they'd become too sensitive and I was moving too quickly, then maybe I'd take it down a notch. But it's worth when you change them up. It's gonna feel weird. It will definitely feel weird when you change your settings, and don't just play one game and then freak out and think that you've screwed them all up. I'd recommend sticking with it for a few sessions and just see how you get on. But the aim is to keep increasing them up and up and up until you feel you've hit the point where, okay, that's about what I can handle with some practice, and I feel I'm kind of there. I'd like to tweak them maybe up a little bit more, but I feel I'm kind of on the cusp. I've seen some people play with crazy high settings. More power to them. I cannot handle that. It's too wild for me. So this is what works for me. 1x is your red dot, by the way, your red dot and your hollow. So that's a very important one, and I like that to be, you want that to be pretty sensitive, because you need to be able to, you know, readjust your aim, people quite close up to you. And obviously as these get further out, the zoom, the magnification, you want to maybe bring that sensitivity down a little bit, because those small movements can move off you're aiming at a much smaller point on the screen when you're aiming at the enemy player through a 15x or an 8x, although the 15x is kind of buggy, so that's why I've got it on 20, and it's just about usable with 20. But yeah, these are my settings. Hopefully you find that useful. Here's the over shoulder I have on 10. That's another one. Probably the two most critical ones I'd say in terms of aiming are going to be your over the shoulder and your 1x, and then after that your general is very important as well. You see, if we go through these sensitivity ones here again, we can see I've got that running on 10, movement is on 100 now, vert I've got on 50. So my thinking there was when I pushed up some of my other sensitivity settings, I pushed this down because I felt it gave me a tiny little bit more steady control with vertical recoil in a way with the higher sensitivity that I had on my scope. So that works quite well for me. General I've gone on 12. It's good to have general as high as you can while still maintaining control, because that enables you to quickly look behind you and rotate around when you come under fire. It allows you to turn and face your opponents as quickly as possible, which is very, very important. It also allows you to look around your surroundings very, very quickly and see what is going on in the battlefield. So general is another very important one to have as high as you can handle. But it's also, you've got to find the right balance, because your general sensitivity is what you're going to be using to pre-aim. And then once you go into ADS, then you're going to be dropping into this 1x sensitivity here. So you've got to find a nice sort of blend between general and 1x that is going to work for you. Vehicle doesn't really matter too much. It's personal preference, really. Aim acceleration, I've always had off. As soon as they put in an option to turn it off, which they did a long time ago, I've had that turned off. I don't really enjoy having it. What it means is basically when you push your stick to the side, having it on means that if you hold your stick a certain angle to the side, then that will gradually speed up as it moves across the screen. The aim will speed up, whereas if you have it off, it just moves at a steady rate, and I find that a lot easier to track moving targets with. But some games do have some aim acceleration, so depending on what games you've played previously, then you may find it useful to have aim acceleration on. But I think that covers pretty much all of my settings here and covers about everything I wanted to say. I think the main point I wanted to say was you're not going to get success just by copying someone else's settings. That you should also be patient when you change your settings up. Don't freak out and take some time to just see if you can get used to those. And the third point being that your overall goal with controller settings, so with the mouse and keyboard, everything's just, you know, you've got much more, you're controlling your aim with your arm, right? When you're aiming with a mouse, you can move your arm around, and it's all this sort of analog movement of your arm to aim a pointer on the screen, whereas a controller, you're moving a tiny little thumbstick and then controlling it all digitally on screen. So there's a big difference between the sensitivity settings you should have for mouse and keyboard and what you should have for controller. So like I said, very important to just find that sweet spot between too much sensitivity and too little, and that's the balance that's hopefully going to work for you guys. So there you go. Hope you found that useful. I'm sure my settings are by no means perfect, and some of you think they're crazy, some of you think they're great. But like I said, it's all personal preference. They work well for me, and I've been pretty happy with these ones for a while. I've been playing pretty well recently, getting a lot of kills, getting a lot of wins. So hopefully my advice is worth something to you guys. Right, so I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please think about clicking the like button, subscribing to the channel. My name's Ben. We are the Beard Guys, and I'll see you next time.